Psychology. My name is Matthew Fantini. Today I'll be going through the test questions from 2 to 46 of quiz 1, and these will be the even numbers. So let's get started. So question 2. Psychology refers to the A. Empirical study of humanity, B. The experimental study of individuals, C. The scientific study of the mind and behavior, or D. The systematic study of human interaction. You can be confused with this question in quite a few ways, but the answer is in fact item C, the scientific study of the mind and behavior. If you read the first part of your chapter, you would know this one. On to question 4. The empirical method of study is based on A. Logical positivism, B. The observation of phenomena, C. The practice of skills or procedures, or D. Statistical validation. And the answer is in fact B. The observation of phenomena. Let's remember that the scientific method begins with observation to then draw a hypothesis, which is a tentative explanation. So, on to question 6. Which individual wrote Principles of Physiological Psychology and is credited with establishing a scientific laboratory of psychology at the University of Leipzig? This is a history question. Was it Wolfgang Kohler, Sigmund Freud, Wilhelm Wundt, or William James? And the answer is Wilhelm Wundt. On to question 8. Guillermo spends some time each day applying the principles of structuralism to examine his own conscious experience as carefully as possible. Guillermo is engaged in A. Behaviorism, B. Client-centered therapy, C. Introspection, or D. Psychoanalysis. Now the key word here is his own conscious experience, and if you studied, you would put that it's introspection, which has to do with examining your own psychology, your own conscious experience. On to question 10. Functionalist psychologists focus on the function of and behavior and explaining the subconscious, the operation of individual parts of the mind, the operation of the whole mind rather than individual parts, or understanding the id, ego, and superego. I'll give you some time to answer that one. And answer is C, the operation of the whole mind rather than individual parts. Remembering that option D, understanding the id, ego, and superego has to do with psychoanalysis. A also has to do with psychoanalysis. And B, structuralism. On to question 12. According to William James, what was the true purpose of psychology? Was it to interpret dreams with their unconscious messages? Was it studying the function of behavior in the world? Was it the manipulation of human behavior to the betterment of society? Or examining the structure and characteristics of the mind? And if you chose B, studying the function of behavior in the world, you are correct. On to 14 now. Which of the following is one of the reasons that Gestalt psychology did not become more popular in the United States? This is another history-based question. Was it because the rise of behaviorism overshadowed Gestalt psychology? Was it because the proponents were supported and funded by the Nazi Party? Was it that European psychology is not as rigorous as American psychology? Or was it manipulated? And if you studied the textbook, you know that it was option A, the rise of behaviorism overshadowed Gestalt psychology. You could have been confused by option B, because the founders of Gestalt psychology actually fled from Nazism from Germany and emigrated to the United States. Now on to 16. Which perspective within psychology emphasizes the potential for good that is innate to all humans? Was it A, behaviorism, B, Gestalt psychology, C, humanism, or D, structuralism? And if you studied, you know that it is C, humanism, which has to do with unconditional positive regard, On to 18 now. A series of dots arranged in the shape of a face will be perceived as a face, not a series of dots. A psychologist studying this phenomenon is applying the principles of A. Gestalt psychology, B. Humanism, C. Psychoanalytic theory, or D. Structuralism. Now, I'll give you some time to think about that. Remembering that this is having to do with examining the whole rather than individual parts. In this case, a series of dots as opposed to the whole picture that it makes, a face. And it is in fact option A, as Gestalt psychology deals with looking at the individual as a whole rather than individual parts of their consciousness, of their psychology. On to question 20. The cognitive revolution created an impetus for psychologists to focus their attention on better understanding emotions and cultural norms that underlie emotional responses, genetics and the evolutionary adaptations that underlie behavior, stimulus response and the instincts that underlie human reaction to pain, or the mind and mental processes that underlie behavior. And shows option D, that is correct. The mind and mental processes that underlie behavior. Now looking at it superficially, understanding the processes, the explanations behind said behavior. 22. What do structuralism, Gestalt psychology, and Sigmund Freud all have in common? So, was it that they were all concerned with describing and understanding animal behavior? Was that they were all concerned with describing and understanding the inner experience? Were they all concerned with diagnosing and treating female psychosis? Or were they all concerned with the nature of evil during the Nazi regime? You chose option B. You were correct. Remembering that structuralism having to do with the inner mind, the individual parts of the mind, Gestalt psychology examining the inner experience of the individual as a whole, and Sigmund Freud having to do with the subconscious, but has to do with examining the inner depths of the mind. Question 24. Who was the first African American to receive a PhD in psychology in the United States? Was it Carl Rogers, Francis Cecil Sumner, Naomi Weinstein, or Noam Chomsky? Another history question here. It was in fact Francis Cecil Sumner. On to 26. Which famous female psychologist completed all the requirements for a doctorate in psychology but was denied that degree because of her sex? Was it Margaret Floyd Washburn, Annies Prosser, Mary Ainsworth, or Mary Whitman Calkins? Another history type question. Was in fact Mary Whitman Calkins. On to question 28. Lucy wants to study changes in physical attributes, cognitive skills, moral reasoning, and social behavior across the lifespan. Lucy should specialize in what type of psychology? Cognitive psychology, developmental psychology, personality psych, or social psychology? You chose B, developmental psych. You are correct. Changes in physical attributes kind of gives it away as an individual progresses through their life. Changes in moral reasoning, social behavior across the lifespan. So if you look at the keyword here, change, you will understand that it is in fact B, developmental psychology. Question 30. In developmental psychology, there is an increasing interest in researching cognitive changes that occur later in life. Why is that? Is it because the elderly are contracting more cognitive diseases? Is it because the people in developed nations revere the elderly? Is it that populations of developed nations are living longer? Or is it that populations of developing nations are dying sooner? Think about the changes in technology and medicine, the advancements that have occurred in recent times, and you will find the answer. It is because C, populations of developed nations are living longer. There is a more available sample to study. Question 32. In the study of personality, the blank model includes different traits that are believed to underlie each individual's basic tendencies. Is it A, HOPES or hopes? B, the either-or model? C, the fifth dimension? Or D, five-factor model? If you chose D, you were correct. Think about ocean, openness, conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, and extroversion. Out of order, but still correct. 34. When studying personality traits, someone who is hardworking, dependable, and organized will score high on the blank trait. What trait is that? Is it the agreeableness trait, the conscientiousness trait, extroversion, or openness? Hardworking, dependable, and organized. We chose conscientiousness, I got it, it is in fact B. Extroversion has to do with warmth, how skilled a person is in social settings. Openness has to do with openness to new experiences. Agreeableness has to do with how accepting the individual is of others. Those are very general outlooks of each of these traits. Question 36. Una wants to conduct research on personnel management, workplace environment, and what type of environment results in high levels of employee productivity and efficiency. Una should conduct research in the area of what type of psychology? Is it the existential phenomenological psychology, industrial organizational, clinical, or theoretical? Think about it. Employee productivity and efficiency. Chose B, you are correct. It is industrial organizational. This type of psychology focuses on exactly what the question states, improving the work environment, seeking the potential within employees, and making it more efficient and productive. Question 38. ASHYA, or ASHYA, wants to focus on the diagnosis and treatment of psychological disorders and other problematic patterns of behavior. What area of psychology should she work in? Clinical psychology, cognitive psychology, counseling psychology, or social psychology? If you chose clinical psychology, you are correct. Which of the following is a common requirement of a PhD across different schools and/or countries? A year-long internship, a dissertation, a minimum of 3 years of coursework, or earning licensure. This is toward the end of your textbook. So if you studied that, you would know that this is, in fact, B, a dissertation. (42) Blank is the active application of a set of skills to information for the understanding and evaluation of that information. This is a short answer question. Let you think about that for a second. Think about it. You're applying the knowledge you have, the set of skills that you acquired to understand and better evaluate that information. If you chose critical thinking, you are correct. 44. The expression, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, would be most applicable to a person who studies blank psychology, an older model that continues to influence areas like sensation and perception. Think about it. Emphasis on the whole rather than the sum of its parts. If you chose Gestalt psychology, you are correct. Lastly, question 46. List some facts about the American Psychological Association. This is a free-form answer, but here are some facts that if you listed these, you would be correct. So I'll read them for you. The American Psychological Association, or APA, is a professional organization that represents psychologists in the United States. The APA is the largest organization of psychologists in the world, and its mission is to advance and disseminate psychological knowledge for the betterment of people. There are 56 divisions within the APA. Members, affiliate members, and associate members span the spectrum from students to doctoral level psychologists. They come from a variety of places, including educational settings, criminal justice, hospitals, the armed forces, and industry. So, if you stated something along the lines of this paragraph here, you would have been correct. Good luck. That's the end of this series of test-based questions for 2 to 46. Hopefully this was helpful for you, and hopefully you're learning well and that you're successful in your future quizzes. All right? You take care.